How's it going, guys? I'm attorney Michael Eline and had a rough day today, but I decided I would join you anyways. I was teetering on whether or not I was going to go live, but I just look, I also play the stock market because obviously I'm trying to defer taxes and stuff like that. So I wanted to come live and just share with you what I learned today. And I did some additional research. So just so you guys know, I'm attorney Michael Eline. I am an attorney licensed in California and Texas. Although I primarily focus on personal injury law today, my background is in Second Amendment rights and appellate law, as well as civil rights and criminal defense. But I found that because so many of my Marine brothers suffering from PTSD get in catastrophic motorcycle accidents and whatnot, I'm a supporter of the Leathernecks Motorcycle Club, et cetera, that long term, I thought that it would be better for me to focus on things that would help other people. Good seeing you. What's the matter, you? Good seeing you, Jody Shiloh. I'm talking to people in my chat sidebar if you guys aren't aware already. But I decided long term that people were getting screwed by insurance companies big time. And so I focus now on personal injury law as well as work comp defense. And I have a background in doing work comp, applicant attorney work, as well as insurance law. And because of that, our law firm sort of evolved into just helping people who are seriously injured, who are military veterans. And I have one of the largest motorcycle accident settlements in the history of the United States, over $10 million. I run a successful firm. I do freelance work for other firms as well. And I'm here now to help you guys, especially members of Team MPE. And I've grown my channel with your help, from a few thousand subscribers to almost 60,000. So help me get it up, guys. Help me get it throw me some Viagra. Let's get it up to 60,000. Hey, good seeing you, Mr. Count Mine 3. Awesome. And apparently you guys aren't getting my notifications. So always make sure to click that bell, that alarm bell, because the things that I talk about, I honestly don't think the powers that be over at the Marxist run organizations like the GOO, GLE, and the and the YouTube really like me that much. But today I've got a really good show for you. I got my wife to agree to take my son to judo today. So I'm going to do my best to go through this as quickly as I can. So today what we're going to talk about is this whole Iran-Israel war. Excuse me, guys. Had a rough day. I've been up since like 04:30. Was really debating on whether or not I should go live today. But then I remembered that my friend Rami sent me some artwork for a Team MPE hat that he wants me to start selling on my channel. And I realized that this isn't about me anymore. I've got a lot of people who are counting on me to bring you the news as from an unbiased, from a biased point of view with respect to patriotism in American common law, the Republic, the Bill of Rights, natural law. I'm a natural law advocate. And that's why I'm doing these shows. And then Ack says billions must unalive. Well, who knows what's going to happen, Ack? Got to get myself squared away, man. It's weird, as I age, my voice starts to change from my young voice to the old man voice. I probably need a voice coach. I don't know what's going on. And by the way, I'm not bald. I just shaved my head the other day because I've been helping my son with his randori and his newaza. I bought this big inflatable mat. So I'm an advocate of homeschooling. I'm an advocate of homesteading, growing your own food, getting off of big pharma, being healthy. I'm kind of like an Amish guy who's not super religious. I just believe my rights come from a creator, just like our founding fathers did, but I'm not a Mason. But I'm super happy Jody Shiloh always supports my channel. Hopefully we'll have other people show up who are good to go. Hoping to see Kinetic Customs tonight. Been having some conversations with Chile de Castro the last few days. So I would definitely ask all of you, whether you're religious or not, to pray for his family. He's going through a lot of trials and tribulations with his family members. And I'd just like that if you guys could say a prayer for my friend Chile. He's a good guy. He's suffered a lot in his life, and he deserves our love and support. He's the one who made it possible for me to get my start being a YouTube broadcaster. And one thing about me being an inactive United States Marine is we're loyal to our friends. And I'm not really loyal to any particular political point of view. Chile and I obviously have our differences when it comes to that kind of stuff, but what we do agree on and what drove me to Chile is that he believes in natural law and John Locke. So obviously I'm trying to give you guys time to join the channel before I start the show in earnest. But let me turn off this music. I think you've heard enough. So tonight, what we're going to talk about, or today, depending on what part of the country you're in, is we're going to talk a little bit about the Israeli-Iranian conflict. A lot of my subscribers reached out to me yesterday saying, hey, what do you think about the ceasefire? And I was like, there's no ceasefire. You need to learn about the Taraf, and you need to learn about the Talmud. Now, a lot of people tell you that the Talmud is well, you'll hear a bunch of different stuff about it. And a lot of people will tell you that Israel is a secular society. But Israel and the whole idea behind Judaism, modernly they call it Judaism, but the Hebrew religion, if you want to call it that, is that it's based on religion, not race. So we'll get into the history of that some other time. But we're going to talk about, and really what it really boiled down to was history. And I don't really care what your religion is, but if you have a religion that supports jihadis coming in and unaliving my fellow countrymen, I'm obviously not your friend. So, and if you won't fight against those people and you stand idly by while they do things to my fellow Americans, we're not going to get along. So today, the show, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about religious laws as well as cultural laws that stem back from King Darius in Persia all the way back to probably the Babylonians when they allegedly wrote the Talmud. And we're going to talk a little bit about the president's duty to secure our borders, to make sure that people don't come across and cause us harm. And I've got a lot of material for you. I don't know how much I'm going to get through, to be honest with you, but I'll give you a recap on. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Lynn. But it could be spiritually guided. I mean, there's a lot of people who have different viewpoints on that. I have an open mind. So, but by the way, give me a bunch of ones for my new microphone. I was able to get one of these Shure microphones. It's called an SM7DB. And I think it gives me a much better sound. Before, I sounded like I was in an echo chamber, and my friend Rami was telling me that it didn't sound too hot either. So I'm doing my best to try and give the people what they want. You know what I mean? And although I don't do this channel for money because I have a job and I have a firm, anybody who throws me a super chat or buy some membership so we can get the word out to other people about creating parallel systems, I'll absolutely put your questions to the front of the line. So I've got over 20 years practice as an attorney. I've been practicing law in California for about 20 years, since around 2005. And I recently, the last, 2 or 3 years ago, became a practicing attorney in Texas. And if I hadn't got struck with sciatica, because I'm a 70% disabled Marine and I have a lot of injuries, I probably would have already been admitted into the bar in Arizona so we could help our friend Lane Myers. But I also have my primary obligation, of course, is to my wife and then to my children and my son, of course, because he'll be the leader of the family. And so I do believe in a lot of the traditional values that made America a great place, as well as the world, to be honest. But humans are hurting animals, and they end up Tribalism is the order of the day. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that. That tribalism is what drives society. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to go into what happened with the so-called ceasefire, which I don't believe in at all. And I'm going to show you why it's BS, just based on President Trump's own words, why it's BS. But I find it interesting that Barry Soetoro, the guy you call Barack Obama, Bathhouse Barry, was the primary driver in empowering Iran and basically making it possible for the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue savaging its people by giving them like $400 billion of money and assets that were frozen. And I'm going to talk to you about how Sleepy Joe's open borders made it possible for at least 20 million people to sneak across the border. And we know there were millions of what they call gotaways. So the real way that you're supposed to do it is when you apprehend an illegal, you put them in custody, and they have 48 hours to have an immigration hearing. And if they can't prove that they really are deserving of the protections of America, they get sent back home. And 99% of them are not, because they were invited here under Sleepy Joe using your tax dollars by funding non-governmental organizations to flood the country with illegals. Now, what's the matter? You and I have a little bit different of a view on this. He thinks it's because the prison industrial complex, and correct me if I'm wrong, what's the matter, you, because I'm not going to disparage my brothers. He's one of my top moderators. But I believe his position is that the reason why the government wants to flood the country with illegals is because it's going to help enrich the the prison industrial complex, and create more government jobs who will then be totally dependent on your tax dollars for their jobs. And they'll continue voting for the party that gives them your tax dollars for their survival. And the biggest employer in the world is what? The federal government, at least in the United States. So my view on this is a little bit different. My view is that the Democrats purposefully used your tax dollars to invite illegal alien criminals, many of them violent, released from prisons in countries like Haiti, as well as Venezuela, to flood our country so the Democrats could invite them into sanctuary cities like the Soviet Socialist Republic of Los Angeles, so that they would be in a position to change the census. And so the United States Census counts illegal aliens. And by most estimates, California would lose 5 Democrat seats, 5, if illegal aliens were deported. But in a sanctuary city, the local and state and federal government in California refuses to help ICE deport these criminal illegal aliens who broke our laws, most of them who are receiving free health care, a lot of them receiving SNAP benefits and state benefits, by some estimates exceeding $5,000 a month per person, not per family, but per person. And so obviously they're inviting people up here. Last time I was down in El Salvador with my family, because I have a marriage with someone from Central America, the Antifa members on the payroll of the Democrat Party were inviting illegal aliens up here, offering them free cell phones, giving them maps to evade border security, as well as teaching them how they could hop on an airplane with no passport. And the last time I left El Salvador, there was a big line where it said passport-free airplane entrance. That's the rough translation in Spanish. In other words, you could just jump on an airplane, fly up to the United States. You would fly into a military base around 3 a.m. in the morning. And Sleepy Joe was basically helping those people evade our federal law on border protection. So a little bit different opinion than what you're going to hear from the communists like Richard over here. But let's go ahead and let me sort of give you a little bit of information about what's going on. So ultimately what happened here when Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran. And I'm a child of the 80s, so I remember the Ayatollahs, and I even had a dartboard with the Ayatollah Khomeini's face on it. So we were really anti-Ayatollah. And I had a lot of friends who were escapees from the Ayatollah who had been military officers for the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. And if you ever want to read a really good book about Iranian history, take a look at Answer to History by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. I think he was an interesting character. I'm not a supporter of kings. I think that everyone is a free man upon the land, unlike the Marxist Democrats who think everybody should be a single party commie. So I have a little bit different of a philosophy on that. But I'm a recovering Democrat, and I'm here to share information with you based on my experience, background, knowledge, and skill as a lawyer, a military historian, and also as an inactive United States Marine. I never served in combat. I was disabled. I'm 70% disabled, so I'm not going to claim any credit or stolen valor from my brothers, but I'm actively involved in the military community. Most of my friends are still active duty Marines, a lot of them sergeant majors and master gunnery sergeants now because I'm older, but I stay active with the younger Marines too. And I give speeches at the Wounded Warriors Battalion at Camp Pendleton, and I have a military veterans nonprofit named after my father, who died from Agent Orange poisoning, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, because we were lied to about the Gulf of Tonkin. So my primary vision about us is that less government means more freedom, and that we need to abolish the federal income tax and the privately run Federal Reserve. And if you watched any of my other videos the last couple of days, you'll know that I believe the reason that we're at war with Iran and China, even though it's not active, it's being done by proxies, and Russia, is because they're BRICS nations, BRICS, that the Federal Reserve and the CIA in this country and the Jekyll Island bankster traders who destroyed our currency system do not want our dollar to be replaced by BRICS, by a gold-backed currency, which is exactly what our founding fathers wanted for this country, which is the exact opposite of what you Marxist Democrats who support the income tax and communism support. So, and I say Marxist Democrats because I'm what you would probably classify as a conservative Democrat, a social liberal, but also a fiscal conservative. So just to give you an idea, I'm a recovering Democrat. The Democratic Party, I didn't leave them. They left me because I don't believe that men should have tampon machines in their restrooms. And I don't believe you can change someone's biology. So obviously somebody like me could never support a party like that. So, and you're right, the Cold War never ended, Essex. The KGB was replaced by Chinese intelligence. I agree with that, brother. Absolutely. And good seeing all these new people in the chat. Wow, this is incredible. Yeah, so Jeffrey Blau says the Republicans have done all things that you claim to be against. Well, I'm against the Ku Klux Klan, and that was created by the Democrats. I'm against the murder of unborn children, and that was advocated by Margaret Sanger, Hillary Clinton's friend, Hillary Clinton's idol, and Bill Gates's father, who was also a founder or highly active member of Planned Parenthood. I'm against eugenics, which is what the Nazis were for, as well as what the Democrats are for. Still to this day, I'm against George Soros, and that's Democrats, who helped the Nazi Party, by his own admissions, seize property from Jews. And I have a lot of friends who have designated themselves as Jews who helped me get my start in practicing law. So you're right, brother. Thank you for making that comment. But I'm a libertarian. I don't really support any political party, but I appreciate your ridiculous comments. So let me see what other comments we have here today. Our Francis McCrory says our federal government is infiltrated with thousands of pointless jobs. No question about that. Absolutely. Well, it's designed to create permanent voters. See, government employees. So there's an old joke we had back in California when I was growing up. What's orange and sleep 6? A Caltrans truck. Those are the guys who fix the road. So the one guy who has my background, who believes in a merit-based society, does all the work. And the other guys stand around with their hands out and vote for somebody like Obama, right? For free everything. But you and I, the ones who have your philosophy, have to work for it. That's something that they should tell our communist college professors, right, guys? Right, Jody? Absolutely. So, hey, what's up going on? Hey, Canon 0311. Era freaking outstanding. I can't find my cover, or I would put it on for you, Marine, but I appreciate having you here. So I'm looking at some other comments. Yeah, Kevin Dusick talks about the Marxist college professor lie that there was a Southern switch. But no, the Democrat Party still supports all the same things that they did back in the old days. They want to keep black families separated and on welfare, keeping them slaves to the state. A lot of black males are leaving the Democrat Party because they realize they're being replaced by illegal alien criminals that Sleepy Joe invited up here. Because they don't want alpha males. And I was a Marine, and I'm going to tell you right now, the black dudes that I served with were the hardest, toughest mother effers on the planet. No joke, man. Most of them were our guides, which is the guy who carries the guide on, and they were badasses. And, if their single moms hadn't brainwashed them into thinking the Democrats were good, they would be a typical Trump supporter. I'm just being real. Good seeing you. What's the matter, you? All right. So now that What's the Matter You's back, we're going to get into the next video. Sorry, guys, I'm a little congested today. It's definitely a humid day today out here. Let's OTVO, good seeing you. Let's OTVO is also an inactive sailor. The guy's about 10 feet tall. When I first met him, when I was going to see Chile de Castro, when he had his hearing, I think it was a bail hearing, if I'm not mistaken, in Nevada. I'd seen pictures of him on the internet, but I'm telling you guys, when I saw this guy, I literally was like, fudge, man, I'd have to take a baseball bat to this guy. I've been in judo since I was 6 years old. And I was thinking, oh my God, if I ever ran afoul of this individual, I'd be in trouble. So, but what's the matter, you? By the way, guys, one thing I want to tell you about my channel is I'm a natural law advocate. And so I don't buy into the left-right paradigm. Although many people say I'm a little right of Attila the Hun, I'm just a Jeffersonian anti-federalist, and I call them like I see them. And I'm pro-USA. So give me a bunch of ones if you're pro-USA too. USA, baby. That's what it's all about. Make asylums great again, right, Jeff? But a lot of the people, well, Giuhuru Bell, I live for the day that black, white, whatever color you identify yourself as long as you're not a guy who thinks he's a chick, whatever you identify with, that we all identify ourselves as the human race, because the only people who benefit from dividing us are politicians. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So the first thing we're going to get into today is really quickly, after Trump pissed off the Democrats and bombed Iran, their ally, the greatest terror state in the history of mankind, the Iranians, the Democrats were really upset about that. So they went ahead and they tried to impeach him. So we'll get into the first video about what happened with the Marxist Democrats and the impeachment proceeding, and then we'll move on through the show. I have family coming in from Central America tonight, so I don't know how long I'm going to be able to go. And Andrew Tate made a comment earlier. I don't even think there are any modern day purebreds like you're speaking of. I think that they're Edomites, like King Herod was an Edomite. And I challenge you to find someone who was genetically similar to who you're speaking about, other than the Saudi royal family. I would say the Saudi royal family is more genetically related to the individuals you're speaking about than the modern European people from Eastern Europe who occupy that strip of land today. So let's go ahead and get into the first video. Quickly, privates, so you can kind of see what's going on. Here we go. Not hearing any sound. So I'll just narrate this for you since there's no sound, but immediately the Marxist Democrats decided to try to impeach Donald Trump for attacking the largest terror state in the world, Iran, and the Republicans decided to table the motion, I guess. This had to do with the impeachment of Donald Trump. So the House blocked the Democrat lawmakers' efforts to impeach Trump for striking Iranian nuclear sites. So I'll give you, since I'm a lawyer and I'm also a military historian, so there's something called the War Powers Act. So under the Constitution, it is true that only Congress has the power to declare war. But for a 2-week period, the president has the right to use the Navy and Marine Corps as an expeditionary force, I think as well as the Army now modernly, but it used to just be the Navy and the Marines. The president's own, right? The Marines. To use our military for a limited purpose, and it's called the War Powers Act. And then after that, Congress either has to reapprove it, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, or declare war. So let's just take a look. Anyways, the Marxist Democrats were not able to. Yes, William H. Pacey. No comment on that, but I would have to say, based on my research, that is a true statement. So if you guys see William H. Pacey's statement, ever since I've been talking about this, guys, YouTube has been throttling the hell out of my channel. And we know who runs YouTube, right? So we don't want to have any problems with them. Otherwise, I can't bring you these amazing shows. But ultimately, the motion to impeach Orange Man Bad was tabled, which means it's not going to go forward. Let me see here. A 10-piece strip combo, $23. No, I did not serve under a Marxist Democrat president, John Edward, and also Marine is spelled with an uppercase M. So I actually served under probably just as bad of a president, probably a rhino Republican who is basically an asset of the CIA. But being a Marine, we serve for the brotherhood. We don't serve for the government. We serve because we love each other as brothers. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And we've learned that our government has lied to us over and over again, and we don't trust either party. My father died from Agent Orange from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because your Democrat president decided to send Americans into Vietnam. And then later they told us that Agent Orange was safe and effective and non-toxic. And then as a result of that, a lot of Americans have died from that. And because it mutates, I may very well also have that in my body, probably like the things that you were telling people to inject into their bodies just recently, right? Probably you were one of those people who said that if you don't take this thing, that you should be thrown in prison, right? Because some Democrat or some guy who worked at the CDC told you had to, or maybe Justin Trudeau, right? So, and now we know about the sides, but you can't talk about them on social media. Why? Because they get a lot of money from the people who say that it's safe. So you can go F yourself, buddy. But yeah, I have a military veterans nonprofit, and I help veterans who are suffering from service-related cancer and things of that nature. Well, Jorn says that LBJ was a Dixiecrat. Well, if you mean to say that he supported the KKK, I believe you for sure. I think that's why he wanted to get black people dependent on welfare and make it absolutely impossible for the black family to stay together. Because to this day, you can't collect welfare if the birth father lives in the house with the birth mother, cannot have the birth father's name on the birth certificate. So think about that, guys. Think about that. It's pretty sad. So it was just a way for people like LBJ to keep the black man down, in my opinion. So let me take a look here. Congrats, you downloaded the nanobots. You know what I try to do, Essie? I heard Yeah, see that if you take nicotine, it helps fight that off. So I've been popping some ons every once in a while to try to fight that. But as you can see, the motion to impeach Trump was tabled. Of course, the Marxist Democrats didn't win. The big problem with the Marxist Democrats is that they're pushing all this didn't earn it DEI nonsense and trying to tell little boys that they're girls, and they've taken over the National Education Association as well as the California Teachers Association. And so, by some estimates, on average, about 200,000 people are fleeing California per year. And it's mainly small business owners and people like me who left, who want to have their Second Amendment rights remain intact. And they don't want their children being brainwashed by the blue haired mafia to hate their country and being told that white people are oppressors and that everyone else isn't oppressed. Quite frankly, we're sick of it. I'm in an interracial marriage, and the vast majority of my Marine Corps brothers also married women from third world countries. So we think that you guys are complete a-holes for trying to push that bullshit narrative. It's not about skin color. It's about who you are as a person. And for you guys to push that reverse racism nonsense, you guys are too far gone. You're a member of a cult. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on out there. But I do appreciate you guys joining me. So the next video we're going to do is, just give me 1 second, guys. Gosh, we've already got 30,000 views, and I haven't even started my videos. So just give me 1 second, guys. Let's get into the show in earnest. Now that we've got a pretty decent, we got like 799. We've been popping in and out from 1,200 to 700 people. So that's pretty cool. Right on, Lynn Davidson. And by the way, if I see enough of you guys, make sure to like and subscribe and make sure to save and record these videos, because the things that I share with you are pretty prophetic. Many people say I'm sort of the John the Baptist of YouTube. I'm sort of a voice in the desert that teaches you don't have to be part of the left-right paradigm. I believe in critical thinking, which is not taught in the public school system. I'm an advocate of homeschooling, homesteading, growing your own food, and being a free man upon the land, which is exactly what the anti-federalists like Tom Jefferson and John Jay believed. So, and I'm all about homeschooling, man. And most of you guys who follow my channel can see that I'm a highly, highly dedicated father. Irrespective of the relationship I have with the mother of my children, and I do love her. But over time, things can change, right, guys? But you guys who just abandon your families, you're a disgrace, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. Women change over time. Their hormones change. And when you took that oath, for better or for worse, you should abide by that oath. So let's go ahead and we'll watch the next video, and we'll move on. We'll move into it.
Who's sure about that, right? What if they have not been taken down? What if, this ceasefire or whatever you want to call it is a work left?
Oh, by the way, when Joe Biden said that people like this work at 7-Eleven, why didn't you say that he was racist? Oh my goodness. Let's keep listening.
Of done. And largely the Iranian capabilities remain intact. What is he going to do about that then? What if whatever negotiations go on, you have thrown whatever you could at the Iranians? You have not been able to make them budge any.
No regime change.
No, you can't effect a regime change out there, and you've not been able to budge them really, despite imposing all kinds of sanctions on them. And now, because you want to impose more sanctions on them, you are trying to rope in countries like India, which is supposedly a very friendly country and one of the few countries in the world where there is a very positive image of the United States. Most of these MAGA characters are trying to alienate us also. Fine, we'll survive. It'll cause some losses for us, but we'll manage. The world can live without the United States. Can the United States live without the world? So the kind of craziness that we are seeing now in the US is really reaching next level. And frankly, the question is that when Trump very boldly said, total surrender, has he got total surrender? Has he got total surrender? I don't think so. And if he hasn't got total surrender, then is this back to TACO? Trump again chickens out, or always chickens out. So
And
I
then
don't.
also, yes.
It's a bizarre world we are living in now, where we thought that the most powerful country in the world had some gravitas in it, had something that people could rely on, something that people, you took the words of an American president very seriously.
Correct.
I'm not sure if we can anymore.
That's a strong statement, and that's perhaps what a lot of people have been discussing about. Ambassador Vora, tongue in cheek, if I may ask, is this Donald Trump's world and we are just living in it? At least that's how he makes it appear.
Well, ma'am, thank you very much. First of all, appreciation for permitting me to be on your amazing channel. I learned so much from you in particular. And then a complaint. You have Mr. Veshal and you have Sushant Sareen, whose knowledge is much greater than mine. I feel most inadequate in the presence of these two stalwarts. Now, why did Israel hit Iran?
By the way, I appreciate my guest from Ukistan, the United Kingdom, formerly known as Ukistan until your traitor king flooded your country with low IQ sub-Saharan Africans to destroy your country, and a lot of jihadis illegally allowed them to flood your country to replace the natives in the UK with a foreign culture that does not understand the English common law system. I fear for you and your family, brother, and I hope that you seek asylum in the United States so we can change the census like the Democrats are trying to do with illegal aliens and get people like you in the country legally who support a system of individual rights as opposed to mob rules. So I'm glad you're here, brother.
Have to go through another very difficult moment. The scars of 9/11 haven't healed yet. Why did Iran accept it? My own feeling, ma'am, and give me a moment, is that Iran has been so badly clobbered that Ayatollah, who heads the regime, we don't even know where he is. He wasn't seen on Friday press. My own group of people who are very brilliant and much more intelligent.
Oh, he's in Russia for sure.
And I am. We have an informal group. They say he's hiding in Moscow, where he's having tea with his buddy, the Syrian fellow, Bashar al-Assad, or whatever it was. Now, as far as...
It's hilarious that you have to get your news from India to find out what's really going on in the world.
Why did then Iran accept the ceasefire? This, I think, was a face-saving device. Look, Israel came and begged for mercy. So we said, all right, we will forgive you. See what a wonderful people we are. He's got nothing left. His leaders have been eliminated by the Israelis. His strength has gone. His nuclear facilities, whether Mr. Sareen accepts it or not, have been bombed. This is what Bibi Netanyahu said, that we have achieved the idea, our objective of eliminating its nuclear and missile facilities. I have no reason to doubt him. If it wasn't there, he would have continued to fight. But for Iran, it was meant to be a victory celebration. I just heard others I've seen the thing, oh, we've defeated the greatest country in the world. Oh, wow. Mr. Veshal, if you live in the United States, did you know that Iran just invaded your country? Because they've defeated the greatest country in the world. Happy birthday. I don't know what kind of stuff these guys have for this hallucination. But nevertheless, my own feeling, ma'am, this ceasefire is not going to last. It was never meant to last. President Trump, whom I respect greatly as the president of the most powerful country in the world, I might have a different opinion about him as a person. But nevertheless, I've met him a few times. I think he's a great guy. And so what he has gone, and even he said on his way to Brussels, that terrible fellows, these Israelis, can America survive, continue to control the Middle East? Bottom line, without Israel, Israel is the chowkidar. Otherwise, all these Sunni Islamic radical fellows around are going to create total chaos in the Middle East. Israel is a force for stability. And ma'am, by way of disclaimer, may I say something also, Mr. Sareen? If you understand why I speak on behalf of Israel, in my extended family in the US, I do have a Jewish daughter-in-law. She calls me dad. So you can understand that my heart goes out to these kids there, and they have a right to survive. So do the Iranians. But basically, there is a total lack of trust. Until that lack of trust...
Lack of trust in who, Ambassador Vora?
The Israelis to the Iranians to the Israelis, and to some extent, the Israelis in the United States, of course, very little, but the Iranians totally in the United States.
William, do you feel at this... Yes, go ahead, sir. Finish your point.
Sorry, I was going to complete by saying my own feeling The people of Iran, whether you like it or not, are living in a house where they are uncomfortable. It's ruled by unelected institutions. There is a racket called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. If you're not wearing the right clothes or your hair isn't styled properly, you can be picked up and put in.
But are our representatives really elected when they use voting machines and they have an opaque system where you're not even allowed to know who the shareholders are in these companies because they hide behind trade secrets and stuff like that? Give me a bunch of ones if you think we should get rid of all voting machines, all of them, and go back to a hand-counted ballot. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Give me a bunch of twos if you're a Marxist Democrat who supports voting machines.
In jail. No, I don't think, ma'am, a young lady like you, a very elegant lady, would want to live in a country like that.
Absolutely. I do agree to that. So there are issues clearly with the regime.
Therefore, let me say, ma'am, that the people of Iran are living in a haunted house. But what is the alternative? If we overthrow the regime, we get out of the house. The West had made so many promises about liberation. Happy birthday, Iraq. Happy birthday, Libya. Happy birthday, Syria.
About liberation, Ambassador Vora, and also the Nobel Peace Prize. William, let's address the elephant in the room regularly. And we have put out that statement of Donald Trump that it is very clear now that the incumbent president believes that he's not being given enough credit, that he won't be getting a Nobel Peace Prize despite all his initiatives. Do you believe his initiatives are working? Because from where I look at it, possibly, if at all, we can say with North Korea, the tensions may have eased. But otherwise, whether it's Congo, Rwanda, Abraham Accord, Russia, Ukraine, the war is still on.
You know, I grew up north of New York City and been watching Donald Trump involuntarily since the early 80s, and he has never felt that he has received the credit that he's deserved on any topic whatsoever. So this is just in calling with his longstanding personality. He's also very frustrated that President Obama received the Nobel Peace Prize right at the beginning of his tenure. And so these types of disparities in his mind gnawed him. His policies towards Iran have been confusing to the outside world because, frankly, they've been confused inside the administration and inside of the mind of Donald Trump. He got out of the JCPOA, went to maximum pressure, then came into this administration, his second term, firing all the people that were interested in maximum pressure, trying to beg to go into something like the JCPOA again. Then Iran said no. Didn't want Israel to attack. Israel did attack. Then he liked Israel's attack. Then he wasn't going to attack. Then he did attack. So there has been a lack of strategic consistency from Donald Trump. There's no question about it. The question before us right now, where we are, is given the strategic advantages that, to be fair, Donald Trump has contributed to, and Israel has contributed to vis-a-vis Israel. Can they turn that into a diplomatic initiative that can achieve our real objective, which is that Iran is not in a position to pose an existential threat to the region?
What do you think is the biggest objective? You think that Iran has been slightly has been pushed back to a certain extent? Do you think that is an achievement that Trump administration has achieved?
Bathhouse Berry.
It's absolutely an achievement that the Trump administration has achieved. It's first and foremost an achievement that Israel has achieved through its decimation of its proxies, through setting the conditions for regime change to happen in Syria, losing perhaps Iran's most important proxy, and its response to not one but two direct Iranian attacks on Israel by taking out first its air defenses and then beginning to take out its nuclear program, followed by Donald Trump hopefully completing the job in Fordo. The regime in Tehran is guilty of strategic malpractice and has led itself and its people into a series where Iran's power is severely diminished. That's the reality, and that's why they're hopefully going to come to the negotiating table.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So what we're going to talk about also is the religious as well as cultural differences and similarities between the Israelis, the Hebrews, and the Iranians prior to and since they became Shia Muslims. in why it's okay under their religious texts to lie to each other, because both of them consider the other party to be unbelievers. So we'll talk about that as well. But I've got evidence right now. As a lawyer, I can tell you, within minutes of Donald Trump announcing that there was a ceasefire, both countries started attacking each other. Just unbelievable. And we're going to get into the actual cultural and religious reasons why this war is by no means over. I thought today my UVIX, the fear and greed index, was going to be up to like $60 to $100 a share. And I've been wrong before on the stock market. The only people who make money on that are the banksters, long-term holders, unfortunately, and people like that. So what do they call them? The hedge fund guys, right? Because they have inside information, like the Pelosi family, right? Or the Trump family, or the communist Marxist in the Biden family, right? The anti-American communists. So let's go ahead and listen to what these guys have to say about what's going on. Because guess what, guys? Like I told you several days ago, I think it's called the Fordo Nuclear Storage Facility. I knew that they had trucks that had pulled up days before and drove off with the nuclear material. Okay. So any nuclear weapons, and I think that it's pretty well established by people that have a brain, that the Iranians do have nukes. I mean, they've got North Korea helping them. They're part of the BRICS currency system, trying to replace the Federal Reserve currency system with a gold-backed currency like our founding fathers under our Constitution requires for this country. And I've talked about that in other videos, so I don't want to go over that. But look at some of my other lives from the other day. Make sure to check them out and like and subscribe to those. But immediately, this is crazy. Immediately after the so-called ceasefire, they both started attacking each other again. So you're going to see it keep happening. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. And because of Sleepy Joe's wide open southern border, I think that it's fair to say, along with us giving weapons to one of the most corrupt countries on earth, Ukraine, where it's estimated at least 40% of the small arms we sell them are sold on the black market to enrich their scumbag politicians, even to Russia, have ended up in the hands of drug cartels, communist Chinese infiltrators, as well as the drug cartels. And who are they going to be traced back to? Kind of reminds me of Operation Gunrunner, right under, I think it was Biden. Not Biden, Obama. Bathhouse Berry, right? Same deal. But let's go ahead and take a look, and you guys tell me what you think.
Has been done. This is a real question. It's also a political question that has been to something that Donald Trump has been sort of dealing with here recently. What are you learning, Natasha?
Yeah, look, Brianna, this is the first assessment that we are getting that the U.S. intelligence community has found about the battle damage that resulted from those U.S. military strikes on these 3 Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. And as you said, it was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it is worth noting that it is a very early assessment. The strikes were only a matter of days ago, and the intelligence community is still gathering intelligence. They are still working to come up with a full, comprehensive picture of what exactly happened here. But based on a battle damage assessment that was carried out by U.S. Central Command, essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged, the Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months. Now, we presented this information to the White House for comment, and White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, she did acknowledge the existence of this assessment, but she said in a statement that the administration disagrees with it. She said, quote, "This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret."
And by the way, I just got a news alert that many people are saying that Israel is attempting to sabotage Trump, the ceasefire, as the U.S. braces for false flag attacks as Netanyahu demands regime change in Iran. And of course, we know that Epstein Island, most people who are somewhat intelligent realize that was a Mossad operation to blackmail U.S. politicians. So think about that, guys. Look up Ghislaine Maxwell and who her father was, one of the most famous Mossad spies in the history of the Mossad. Her father, the right-hand woman of Jeff Epstein. Let's keep going.
But was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets, total obliteration. Now, it is worth noting here that there has been dissent, I should say, within the intelligence community, within the defense community about just how much of an impact these massive bunker buster bombs would actually have on Iran's nuclear facility. It was far from certain, given that these bombs had never been tested in an actual combat scenario.
It does make me laugh that the Democrats support these Islamic terrorists like the Iranians, but they don't support Israel. It just doesn't make any sense because they accuse Israel of doing the same exact crap that Iran's doing, but somehow it's okay. And they still think that the ancient land of the Hebrews is somehow Palestinian, which is a name that was invented, in the 1950s or something? I don't understand it, to be honest.
Whether they would actually penetrate those very, very deep underground tunnels that lie underneath these nuclear facilities. And what we are told is that as of now, this Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, it does conclude at this point, again, it is still very early, that those underground facilities, including the centrifuges, including the highly enriched uranium that everyone has been talking so much about, those are largely intact. Now, of course, this does stand at odds with what President Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth have been saying in recent days about the impact of these U.S. military strikes. Of course, President Trump said it was totally obliterated, and Secretary Hegseth did as well. And he actually also provided CNN with a statement. And he said that, quote, based on everything we have seen, and I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. Our massive bombs hit exactly the right spot at each target and worked perfectly. The impact of those bombs is buried under a mountain of rubble in Iran. So anyone who says the bombs were not devastating is just trying to undermine the president and the successful mission. Now, our sources did emphasize here that there was severe damage that was done.
Does anybody really believe that with all of the traitors inside of our government, all the Marxists who hate America and support Iran, that any of that nuclear material was in any of those bunkers? Does anybody really believe that? Really? If you do, I've got a bridge that I want to sell you. So the bottom line is this war is by no means over, and communist China is probably resupplying Israel right now. Iran, as we speak, with hypersonic missiles and more weapons. And China's got nothing to lose. I mean, if the Iranian mullahs decide to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the only people who win is U.S. oil, the largest oil producer in the world, the United States, and Russia, because Russia supplies China with oil. Look at the border, guys. The reason why Russia is existing at all right now is probably because of their oil sales to China. And they're all part of the BRICS currency system, where they're trying to replace the US dollar. Many people say the Israeli dollar. A lot of people say the Federal Reserve banking system is run by the Israelis. And that's how it was started, by the Rothschild family and their surrogates. A lot of people say that. If anybody has any evidence to that, please put it in the comments for me. I'd like to see that. But yeah, I don't believe it's over. Not at all. So I bought a ton of UVIX today. I think it closed at like $23.70 a share or something, $23.66. Pretty cheap. I think when I bought it last time, it was like at 25, and then it went up to 29. It's going to go back up. So once I get that, I'm going to go buy some physical gold and silver, man, and probably some digital currency as well. Of course, yeah, Trump warned them. They moved it. But I don't know, James, it could have just been the Marxist Democrats who work in all the administrative agencies that were filled up by Bathhouse Berry, right? And we know that they're big-time Iranian supporters, and they have no loyalty to this country. Of course not, because they're Marxists. They want to destroy our way of life and our constitutional republic. They think that there should be tampon machines in the men's room, for crying out loud. Give me a break. And I appreciate that. Jeff hates pigs. I'm just a free man upon the land, and I call it like I see it. So What I'm going to do really quick, guys, is I'm going to talk to you about why this ceasefire is probably not going to work, just based on based common sense, okay? Because this has to do with ancient law. And because I'm a lawyer and a legal historian, I think I'm in a pretty good position to talk about this. So basically, this is really a sensitive issue involving religious texts. And although Israel is supposedly secular, many people realize that Israel is established based upon the idea that it's the land of God's chosen people. That's it. It literally is based upon that concept. So whether you're secular or not, it's a religious idea that anybody who goes by that title or that concept, that they're God's chosen people. And even the Christians believe that Israel is the land of God's. Many of them believe that anyways. There's different sects in Christianity as well. It's really interesting when you talk to different sects of the Christians. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to address each position, from the Iranian position, the ancient Persian tradition, and getting into them becoming Shias, and then also the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. So the first one we're going to talk about is, the Persian Taaraf, Taarof, which is why a lot of people that I'm not going to name names that I've worked with as lawyers don't want to do business with Iranians, because they say that they lie, right? But because in their culture, it's expected under the Taaraf that you will lie. At least that's what I've heard from my friends who are Iranian, who I serve with in the Marine Corps. So in any event, there's different interpretations, and they're going to vary widely, and geopolitical actions are often driven by pragmatic rather than purely religious or cultural motives. But what we'll do is we'll talk about the relevant context based upon the recent Israel-Iran ceasefire dynamics as provided in the search results, as well as books that I have on the subject, all the way back to one of my favorite books, Answer to History by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the former Shah of Iran, who was actually put into power by our CIA. Really interesting. And Mias Taro, I'm not sure what you mean about suing the Marine Corps for wiretapping, but I'd love to know more about what you're talking about. I know that the Naval Investigative Services illegally wiretapped Chief Eddie Gallagher's computers and his internet connections so they could find out what his legal team was talking about when he was being falsely arrested and accused and imprisoned by Naval Investigative Services. If that's Navy SEAL Chief Eddie Gallagher, if that's what you're talking about, I agree with that. Absolutely. And yeah, I don't tolerate any racism here. And I've got a lot of friends who are Arabic, but we're talking about the Persians today. So I just don't like all the crazy religious stuff. It just keeps us divided. But under the Talmud, I'm going to give you some ideas why Israel might lie to Iran and you about the ceasefire. So the Talmud is the central text of Rabbinic Judaism. It doesn't explicitly address modern geopolitical scenarios like ceasefires between nation states. And it doesn't really provide a blanket rule, say many, about permitting lying to non-Jews. But there's a lot of Christians and a lot of other people who say that the Talmud explicitly says it's okay to lie to non-Jews, and it describes them as goyim, Goyim. So the certain Talmudic principles could be interpreted to justify deception in specific contexts, particularly in matters of survival or justice. So this is why it gets a little nuanced, all right? So the Talmud generally condemns lying, allegedly, right? Because we don't know, because they'll say, just like the Arabs or the Muslims, the Sunnis say, so don't get mad at me, Mias, but like the Sunni Muslims, as well as the Shias say, even though it says it's okay to lie to non-Muslims under the Taqiyya, they'll say that you're misinterpreting our Quran and you're lying, right? Even though it specifically says that, but just like the Talmud. So And that's Shabbat 31a. However, it does permit deception, the Talmud, in limited cases, according to some Jewish religious scholars, such as to prevent harm or to recover stolen property or maintain peace. So that would be what probably the Israeli state would be relying on. And I love the Persians too, Mias, and I had a lot of Persians who were my neighbors in the 80s because their families were massacred by the Muslims, the Ayatollahs. And a lot of, the problem is most of the school kids I went to were just stupid, and they persecuted them because they thought that they were the Ayatollah. But actually, these were people who supported the Shah. And so my neighbors, a lot of them were military personnel and officers who had worked for the Shah. So I got to learn a lot about geopolitics as a young man. And that's when I realized I don't want to have any part of religion. I just believe that my rights come from a creator, and I'm going to decide how I want to live my life. I'm not going to let some mullah or some religious nutjob cleric decide how I'm going to live my life. So in any event, the Bava Metzia 23b discusses withholding the truth to evade unjust demands, like taxes from oppressive rulers, or to recover what was wrongfully taken. This could be stretched to justify misleading an adversary perceived as a threat. The Yevamot 65b allows lying for the sake of peace. Mipneki darkai shalom. Mipnei darkai, I hope I'm saying it right, probably butchering this. I don't speak Hebrew. I'm not an SS member. A lot of those SS guys spoke Hebrew, which is remarkable. But mipnei darkai shalom, which could include diplomatic deception to avoid conflict or gain strategic advantage. So the concept of the pikwach nefesh, or saving a life, overrides most prohibitions against lying. Okay, so that is the Talmud. If it's believed to protect Jewish lives from an existential threat, right? Application to the Israeli-Iran ceasefire. Well, Israel views Iran as an existential threat due to its nuclear program and support for groups like Hezbollah, who have been butchering Israelis for years. And that's why, and Christians as well, that's why the Falange Christians allied themselves with the Israelis in Libya. So because of that, Israeli leaders do believe that Iran is using a ceasefire to regroup or advance its nuclear ambitions. So they might justify deception, claiming a ceasefire compliance while planning future strikes. I mean, give me a bunch of ones if you guys think, and you too, Miastero, if you think that Israel is basically planning for another strike, and that's all this is really about, is just regrouping to have another strike. So under the Talmudic principles like the pikwach nefesh, or self-defense, that could be why they're doing this. And so Israel's post-ceasefire strikes on Tehran, citing Iran's alleged missile launches, suggest a strategic approach where trust in Iran's intentions is low. And we're going to get into why it makes common sense that Israelis and a lot of people in the United States don't trust a lot of Persians that live here in a minute. But many people say this is just a misinterpretation of Talmudic law. Other people say it's not. Both Jews and non-Jews have different interpretations of how the Talmud is supposed to be interpreted. So, but the main claim on Talmudic law, just like the Quran, is that Jews, or in case of the Quran, Muslims, are allowed to lie to non-Jews, to the unbeliever, right? A post on X, actually, that I read the other day said that the Talmud allows people to lie to the Goyim, allows Israelis to lie to the Goyim and dishonor agreements. But the same can be said about the Iranians. And that's why I think the more hardcore religious you get, the more you adhere to those principles, that it's okay to lie to someone who doesn't have your same religious beliefs. And I think that's where we're kind of headed, guys. So the geopolitical reality is that Israel's actions are probably driven by more strategic calculus than the Talmud, but the Talmud could be used as a basis for that. And I did see a video where Netanyahu said that he's a supporter of the Talmud. So it could be that he uses that as a basis to keep his religious base supporting him, Perhaps. I'm not sure. I'm a lawyer, so I'm just looking at it from a legal perspective. So let me just really quickly. Just bear with me, guys. I got a lot of notes and I want to get through this as quick as I can because I do have work to do tonight. But so it looks like they both, like right after the ceasefire was announced, started launching strikes against each other. So we can already tell that they're lying to each other, right? And to us. So Talmudic principles might provoke, like I said, a post hoc justification for some, but national security priorities probably would be the main thing. I mean, again, Iran has been using Syria as well as Libya to launch across the border strikes forever. And they've been massacring Christians and other people who refuse to follow Islamic law, right? Because they're radical nut jobs, right? And many people say. So Iran's nuclear weaponization is the pretext that Israel is using now. Other people say it's because Israel wants to have greater Israel, similar to what the Germans wanted, Gross Deutschland. Very similar, very, very similar. But anyways, in summary, under the Talmud, Israel might theoretically justify lying about a ceasefire to protect lives or counter a perceived threat, but such actions would be context-specific, not a general rule against non-Jews, say many. In practice, Israel's behavior aligns more with geopolitical strategy than religious law, according to the Israelis, because they claim to be a secular society. Now, let's get into the Persian Taraf next. And I don't know if I probably butchered that as well, but let me really quickly, privates. I'll let this Persian guy tell you about the Taraf, and then I'll read to you my legal understanding based upon religious law and my interpretations of doing extensive studies on the Taraf. I'll let this guy tell you. Let's get into it.
Hi guys, today's video is about maybe look into Persian culture about the concept of Taraf, which is very hard to get a grasp on. I think it's hard to get a grasp on this because it's special for Iran, and it's in some parts of Iran it's even more extreme than other parts. For example, in Tehran, because the Western culture is a bit mixed with a young generation, it's not like that as extreme. But in other cities, like more traditional cities, it's more embedded in the culture, and you can see it and feel it more. To put it in the concept, I can make an example for it. Like a simple situation would be like someone is offering you fruits, and you would, out of politeness, like there are 3 people sitting and it's only 2 fruits, and out of politeness you would say, no, thank you, I don't want it. But then the person who is offering you the fruit insists on it. That's called taraf. So simply we can put it insisting on something, but it's not actually that. It's a lot deeper than that. For saying goodbye, it's used. Right? For saying goodbye, it's used. For offering stuff is used. And
well, hopefully you guys understood him. Forgive me. I know he's got a pretty thick accent, but I really like the video, and it's interesting to hear somebody, because he's a young guy talking about the taraf. And so this is an ancient principle that far, far surpasses in time in the past the taqiyya, which is the Islamic law that allows Muslims to lie to non-Muslims. Say many. There are other Islamic scholars who say that the taqiyya doesn't mean that, just like there are modern Hebrew, Jewish, or Israeli scholars who say that the Talmud doesn't permit lying to the goy, right? So me being a pretty based guy, I'm not going to sit here and say, no, that's what it says, that's what it means, because I'm not somebody from those cultures. What I can say is that anyone who says it's okay to lie for any reason is, even if it's a white lie, is not somebody that I want to do business with. Can you guys give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that? Because I come from a culture where you look someone in the eye and you shake their hand, and your yes is your yes and your no is your no. And that's it. There is no black and white when it comes to that, because my clients would never trust me if they thought that I might lie to them. My wife and kids would never trust me if they thought that I might lie to them. And I would rather be honest and be respected or hated, but at least respected, than be wishy-washy, right? Being wishy-washy to me is the worst thing you could ever be. So that's my issue. I just don't like it. So let's get into a little bit more about the taraf. So I'm trying to say that right, guys, the taraf, the Persian taraf. And by the way, the Persian culture is a very rich culture, and they're responsible for a lot of medicine, a lot of philosophy, and a lot of amazing things in this world. And so I consider myself to be part of the human race, which includes the Persian culture. And give me a bunch of ones if you guys think that religious nut jobs have caused more problems than they've done good in this world. So in any event, the taraf is a Persian, not Iranian, but a Persian cultural practice of polite, often exaggerated social etiquette that emphasizes humility, deference, and indirect communication. It's not a legal or religious system, but a social custom that can influence behavior, including in diplomatic contexts. And this is why I don't think the ceasefire is going to hold. And here's how the taraf might relate to Iran's approach. And I'm going to tell you. So the nature of the taraf, it really involves saying things that somebody doesn't really mean, right? Like if your wife asks you, am I fat? And you say, no, babe, you look great. And then she slaps you in the face anyways, because she knows you're bullshitting her. Give me a bunch of ones if you get it. So a lot of us husbands are forced to use the taraf, even though we're not Persian. It's just real. Because when your wife asks you a question like that, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you always err on the side of caution and say, you look great, right, guys? I mean, at least if you want to keep your family together and not get stuck making alimony payments. So anyway, so for example, offering something insincerely, like, please take my house, right? Or declining something someone wants so you can appear humble. In negotiations, the taraf can manifest as vague commitments or overly conciliatory language to maintain face or delay direct refusal. So I'll just tell you a story. I can't share a lot of information because it's attorney-client confidentiality. So I'm going to present this to you as a hypothetical. I'll present a hypothetical situation where an alleged client came to me and said, I hired this Iranian guy. I hate his guts. All he ever did was lie to me. And he always said, and I'm going to give you how he said it. Oh, you're my good friend. I'll do anything, my good friend. I always call you back. I do whatever you need. Always call you. If you have problems, I always call you. He said he would call his lawyer 2 or 3 times a day for a month, and he never got a single call back once he signed the retainer. So, but it's not just Persians who do that. Car salesmen do the same thing, right? And not all Persians do that, but because of the accent and that they're foreign, it sticks out on your mind if you're a native, right? If you're someone who's lived here all your life. Oh man, it's this guy that's Persian, but dude, your brothers lie to you all the time too. And they're not, if they do that, they're not your brothers. But anyways, that is how I've gotten a lot of my cases, is because people hire me because they know I'm a Marine and I've got a military background, and my yes is my yes and my no is my no. And that's why I don't sign up a lot of cases, guys. I'm not going to lie to you to get you to sign up a case and then investigate the case, find out that I don't want it, and reject it. I front load. So I do my research first. I say, send me your medical bills, send me your records so I can take a look at it. And if I think the case has merit, if it's got the value point where I'm not going to spend more of my own money funding the case than I can recover for you, then I'm not going to take the case. And a lot of people hate me for that, but I'd rather do that than tell my wife that she's skinny when she's really fat. So the way I approach it is, you look good, but you need to hit the gym, and we need to focus on a high protein diet. And I know you're asking me that question because you feel fat. So rather than me just lie to you, let's work on a solution rather than try to lie to each other. Does that make sense, guys? That's right, James Forbes. We do need to take care of our own. So that may be, Mias, that may be Hindi as well. I know that after there was a point in Persian history where a lot of the tribes went to India to escape other people who invaded Persia, who later claimed to be Persian. And that's a different story for a different day. But Mias, I can tell that you're more educated than the average bear. So in negotiations, again, that's the problem with the Taroff is the little white lies can build up, and then it leads to a lack of trust in my culture, because in the American culture that I grew up in, it really is that old Christian culture, the Protestant Christian culture of let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. Your word is your bond. It's very, very strong. And that tight handshake where you crush the other guy's hand as you look him in the eye and you squeeze his hand and you give that person, that individual, a symbol of your strength and your honesty. And you don't even need to have a written contract, because you know spiritually you can trust this person. And that's the way I live my life. So in any event, with respect to the ceasefire, in the Israeli-Iran ceasefire, Iran's public statements like denying missile launches post-ceasefire when they did launch missiles definitely reflects a Taroff-like indirectness. They were launching missiles on Qatar, I think either before, during, or right after the ceasefire. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not going to call them out if they weren't lying about that. But Iran could signal compliance to de-escalate or placate mediators, and that's something they very well could have done. So let me keep going. Oh man, I lost my. Give me 1 second, guys. I lost my cool lighting, so I'm going to put you back over here for a minute. Yeah, my studio is kind of a mess because I'm a lawyer, and so I have files and crap all over the place, and I'm not a professional YouTuber. So I do these shows honestly because all I do, I get up around 4:30, 5 a.m., go to the park with my son and work out with him, take him to judo in the evenings, and all I do all day long is work, 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 because that's what God made me to do, to make sure that I could rear my children properly. So I do these shows because it gives me the opportunity to have friends online, because I don't go out that much. And I love having you guys as friends, and I love getting your different perspectives. Most of my audience doesn't agree with me on anything except for the one thing, which is that our rights come from the Creator, not from the state, and that the state should stay out of our business. And that's why a lot of people love me. And a lot of people hate me too, but I call it like I see it. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You can still hang out with me. We can still be friends. You can still join me at Thanksgiving and debate with me, and we can have knockdown, drag out discussions and still go out afterwards and have some ice cream. It's not a problem. But a lot of people don't like it, and they'll disown me. I've lost a lot of friends too, because they're so dogmatic in their political beliefs that we can't remain friends, which is really sad. But in any event, Iran's claim of imposing a ceasefire on the Zionist enemy uses grandiose rhetoric typical of Taroff to project strength, even if the ceasefire was mutually agreed upon. The Taroff is a cultural norm, not a directive to lie. Say my Iranian friends, by the way. This is what my buddies have told me. I've done a lot of research before I did this show. The primary driver is probably high-stakes geopolitics here, but it's backed by the Taroff because it's cultural. Just like in Afghanistan, where they have the kite runners, since the Afghans, because of religion, can't get a wife unless they can give them a certain amount of sheep or cows or whatever. They have the kite runners so they can get it on with little boys. And in their culture, that's normal. So a lot of my Marine buddies who were over there wanted to take these dudes out because they thought they were RAPEing these little boys. And it was pretty bad. They dress them up like girls and they have them dance for them. And it just was disgusting to the Western culture. And I've got stories for you that we could talk about that another time. To me, it's gross. But in any event, The Tarof is a cultural norm there in Iran and in parts of Afghanistan, because that is they're right on the same border, and there's a lot of similar cultural norms there. So in this case, Iran wants to protect their nuclear sites. They see Israel as their religious and cultural enemy. And so why wouldn't they lie about a ceasefire? So the Tarof could influence how Iran communicates its intentions, making statements appear deceptive to outsiders unfamiliar with their customs. And that's the reason why I think it's really important that when we naturalize citizens legally and allow them to come here legally, we find out a little bit about their background and teach them about our culture so they can assimilate. Because we don't want a bunch of women running around wearing hefty bags on their heads. We want them to become Americans. We don't want to be a multicultural society. We want to be Americans, guys. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So in any event, Iran's denial of post-ceasefire attacks might be less about outright lying and more about saving face amid domestic and international pressure, maybe, or it could be the Tarof. Iran's ceasefire behavior, including alleged violations, reflects distrust of Israel, which it doesn't recognize as a state. And the Tarof might soften Iran's rhetoric, claiming attacks were pre-ceasefire when we know that they weren't. But anyways, the Iranian government's role in framing military actions as defensive suggests a blend of cultural posturing as well as pragmatic calculation. So that's kind of what I think it is. So in summary, under the Tarof, Iran might use indirect or exaggerated language to signal ceasefire compliance while pursuing the greater strategic goal. They're probably just rearming and getting ready for the next attack. So it could be secondary to their geopolitical motives, but it definitely sort of gives them a local argument based on the culture. So now they have another reason in Iran where they could potentially lie and be protected by their religious laws, not just a cultural law. And that's under the Islamic Sharia law derived from the Quran or the Hadith and scholarly interpretations governing ethical and legal conduct for Muslims. Like the Talmud, it generally prohibits lying to people who believe in the same religion as you. But it does allow lying in specific circumstances. Very similar, very, very similar. So the Iran as a Shia Islamic republic follows the 12er Shia jurisprudence. It's interesting because I didn't know about this, so I had to do some serious research about this. So Islamic principles on deception. Islamic law emphasizes truthfulness with fellow believers, and that's Quran 9:119, urging believers to be truthful with each other, fellow believers. But exceptions do exist even for fellow believers, right? So Sunni and Shia hate each other, right? So the taqiyya is what we're talking about. And it's a Shia-specific doctrine that allows concealment of faith or intentions to avoid persecution. And while primarily for individual survival, like in Iran, because the Iranians make up about 20%, the Shia make up about 20% of Muslims, right? Because they're followers of Ali. They would have to lie and say that they were Sunni and maybe even swear an oath that they were Sunni to avoid being decapitated. And so it's modernly been extended to statecraft, permitting deception against all enemies, threatening Islam or their version or brand of Islam. So in War and Peace, the Quda says that it's permissible to gain a strategic advantage. The Hadith says war is deception. Sahih al-Bukhari 3030 is where you can find that. This could include misleading an enemy about ceasefire intentions to regroup or strike unexpectedly. And we're going to talk about Sleepy Joe's open border and how we probably have a lot of sleeper cells that Dementia Joe, AutoPen Joe just allowed to walk across, probably with WMDs. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then necessity is another basis under the taqiyya to lie to someone. And it overrides the prohibitions of lying to protect life, faith, or the Muslim community. In this case, the Shia Muslim community. And lying about ceasefire compliance would be justified to safeguard their national interests under the taqiyya. So Iran's denial of post-ceasefire missile launches, as well as claims of pre-ceasefire strikes, would be justified under the taqiyya or Quda, Quda'a. I don't know if I said that right. Now, Mias, I think that you're Arabic, so you're probably Sunni, if I'm not mistaken. If I don't think you're really religious, but I think that you know about it, right? Probably, because you don't strike me as someone who's really religious. But you could probably educate us if you want to make some comments. I'd love to see it because I want to learn. I'm not here to dictate. I'm here to learn too. So the Iranians government framing of the attacks as responses to Israeli aggression aligns with Islamic law's emphasis on defensive jihad or holy war, potentially rationalizing deception to counter a perceived threat. All right. So Iran's Supreme National Security Council's vow of decisive responses suggests a strategic use of Islamic legal principles to maintain flexibility. So Iran Shia leadership may invoke the taqiyya more readily than Sunni states due to historical persecution. If Iran believes Israel's ceasefire is a ruse to weaken its nuclear program, taqiyya could justify misleading Israel to protect the Islamic Republic. However, taqiyya is controversial and not universally applied to state actions. And some scholars, like I said before, religious scholars, limit it just to personal survival. Now, the geopolitical reality is that Iran's actions are heavily influenced by the realpolitik. And the ceasefire's fragility with both sides accusing each other of violations reflects a mutual distrust rooted in decades of conflict. Islamic law might provide a framework or a pretext to justifying the deception, however. But many people say that it is primarily strategic. Thank you, Gloria. So I just got a $5 super chat. Gloria Ad says, 5 USD. Love you, Michael. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Gloria. Gloria is one of my best mods besides, well, a couple of you other guys, but I love Gloria. She's awesome. So, Mias Taro says she grew up Hindi. But I know what you mean. Okay, I thought you said you were Arabic. Well, yeah, that's right. So that is true, guys. And I apologize if I put you in the wrong category. I guess because me being a Yank, I just think anyone who's Arabic is automatically a Sunni. But she just pointed out, and rightly so, that just because you're Arabic doesn't mean you're a Sunni Muslim. So there you go. And of course, we know that southern Iraq, even though they're Arabic, they're also Shia Muslim. So I was wrong on that. I take it back. Please forgive me. I'll do 20 push-ups for you tomorrow morning at the park if you want to catch me for my lawyer workout at Dark 30. So, excuse me. Basically, both sides have a mutual distrust for each other at the end of the day, and it's obviously rooted in religious law, as well as cultural norms, just based on their histories. Well, Arabic is a language, but it's also people who identify as Arabic do have certain physical characteristics, and they speak the Arabic language. At least that's what I understand. So Salkader says it's a language. So hold on a minute. Salkader 1983 says Arabic is a language, but I'm pretty sure Arab can also reference people who are Arab, who have certain Semitic characteristics, and correct me if I'm wrong. I can make it to 40, Mias. I did, I think 47 the other day for Chevy. He threw me a $10 super chat for doing 47 push-ups, which was pretty cool. I love that. I love getting paid to work out, for crying out loud. So at the end of the day, Iran might justify lying using the taqiyya or the Quda or the darura to counter Israel's perceived threat. However, these principles are likely secondary to Iran's strategic goals, which prioritize national security and regional power. But it is a religious state, so it's probably all of the above, right? So both Talmudic and Islamic law allow deception in what they call extreme cases. And I would say here, it's probably an extreme case. And that's a reason why I don't believe that the ceasefires are going to hold. What do you guys think? I'd like to know what you guys think. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all my research on that. Like whether or not they have the right to lie or they will lie, probably is a combination of cultural and religious stuff. But in any event, right after the so-called ceasefire, they kept attacking each other. So let's take a look at it. Sorry about that, guys. So apologies, I had my mic on mute. So what was going on here is, yeah, we're good. Sorry about that, guys. So the stock markets were all over the place this morning, but generally bullish. So bullish means when the markets are doing good and the fear index is low and the greed index is high. So UVIX crashed, man. My UVIX that was at like $29 the other day crashed to like, by the end of the day, it was down to like $23.66 a share. So I think I sold off around 24 and re-entered and I lost some money, lost like 5 or 6 grand, and re-entered at the lower price to make up for the loss and to buy more shares. And I also bought some FAS, which sort of leverages against the banking system, with the understanding that I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that Iran is anywhere near being done. Okay, the Islamic Republic of Iran is all about revenge and bloodlust. They are all about an eye for an eye, as well as the Talmudic Hebrews, right? It's about an eye for an eye. There is no equity. See, Jesus introduced equity, that your sins were forgiven and that you need to forgive one another. But in these religions, like Shia, Sunni, as well as the traditional Hebrew, it's about an eye for an eye. There is no forgiveness. So this isn't going anywhere, guys. Historically, this isn't going to go anywhere other than more fighting. And I can't understand why Trump was taking a victory lap. And I don't think he understands the cultures of either one of these civilizations. But let's listen to what. That's right, James Forbes. But let's listen to what Orange Man Bad had to say about it.
Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides. I'm going now, as you know, to NATO. Some of you are going with me, and I think it's going to be successful. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Are you going to be the agreement? It's a new dawn in the Middle East thanks to the agreement you managed to achieve. What are your future plans for the region, for Saudi Arabia, Israel, Gaza, the hostages?
Look, you're asking me about women in the Middle East. It's getting a lot better. Things are happening at a high level. As you know, Saudi Arabia's done a really good job. It's coming out far faster than I thought. So we're very happy about what's happening with women in the Middle East.
No, I'm talking about a new dawn in the Middle East that you managed to achieve last night.
Yeah.
The region is going to a new place with this agreement. Can you tell us what's your future plans for Gaza, for the hostages?
Yeah. It's a new dawn. I appreciate the question. You're very nice. Who are you?
Thank you. I'm Neria Kraus from Israeli Channel 13 News.
Well, we have to have Israel calm down because they went on a mission this morning. I got to get Israel to calm down now.
Did you get to speak with the Prime Minister? Did you talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu last night?
I speak to everybody.
You urge both sides not to violate the ceasefire, but reports coming from the region suggest that the sides accuse each other for violating the ceasefire. So
I think they both violated it. I don't think I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all, and I'm going to see if I can stop it. So as soon as I get away from you, I'm going to see if I can stop it, okay?
Have you spoken to him this morning? How confident are you that
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots.
Well, they dropped some bombs into a mountain after the Iranians were tipped off and removed whatever nuclear materials that they had, in my opinion. And we're going to watch another video that says that. I think Trump's in a real precarious situation, guys. He's done a lot of great things with the Second Amendment that I highly approve of. But you heard it yourselves. He said he's playing both sides. He said, I play both sides. Look, I think we're in real trouble, guys. And we're going to get into it in a minute about Sleepy Joe's wide open southern border. And we're at war with Russia and the BRICS nations over currency. And I don't think for a minute that they didn't smuggle in WMDs and other types of chemical weapons, et cetera, across that wide open, porous southern border. There were at least 5 million gotaways. You don't think some of them were people that came up here to do us harm after we attacked Russia, when we promised Russia that we would keep Ukraine out of NATO? And the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine is because the Europeans, as well as the United States, were making treatises to admit them into NATO, which would have definitely caused a lot of problems for Russia. And I could understand why Russia is so upset about that. Let's go ahead and keep on listening to what Orange Man Bad has to say.
That put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
You don't believe that Iran can rebuild its nuclear program?
Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine.
By the way, give me a bunch of ones for Reluctant Prophet. Reluctant Prophet, I'm glad you showed up today. I want to cover some of the things that I've been watching on your channel. Guys, make sure to like and subscribe to Reluctant Prophet's channel. This guy's a legit dude, and he understands the battle between good and evil, and less government means more freedom. What's been happening to him and his friend Lane Myers out in Arizona is a prime example of why we need to form parallel systems, even if we don't agree on everything, so we can make the world a better place. And so I definitely am really grateful that Reluctant Prophet showed up today in the chat. Thanks, Reluctant Prophet. I hope everything's going well for you. And I would like to do a show with you to get an update about what's going on with Lane Myers and to see if there's anything that we can do to help him, find out if he's still in custody, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely love having Reluctant Prophet on here. Let's keep on listening to Orange Man Bad, see what he's got to say.
They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people. And the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement, the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically...
Well, it looks like it got cut off, but hold on. Well, anyways, you heard it from his own mouth. Now, this is the problem. This is the issue that I have is, in my opinion, the United States president's primary job is to protect our border security, to make sure that people who are hostile to us, to the people who live here, can't just sneak across, can't just immediately get free health care and be counted in the U.S. Census in a sanctuary city to help another political party. Give me a bunch of ones if you think that illegal aliens should not be counted in the U.S. Census for any reason. And if you believe that that's the only reason that Sleepy Joe opened up our southern border. Now, I know What's the Matter You says, and I'm glad you joined me, What's the Matter You, is he thinks, and I'm paraphrasing, and I may be wrong, so correct me because I don't want to take you out of context, that the reason why the illegals were flooded into our country was to help build the prison industrial complex, who donate a lot of money to politicians, by the way. But for me, the primary beneficiary from what I'm seeing is going to be the Democrats. We know that California would lose at least 5 Democrat House seats if illegal aliens were deported from the sanctuary city system that they set up in their state, which is also bankrupting California. Less than 3% of illegals, by most estimates, that Sleepy Joe let across actually work. Most of them are collecting government benefits, free hotels, free cell phones, and living off the taxpayer as the Democrats wait for the next census count. And if that census count goes through before these guys are deported, the entire country will turn blue. And that is the reason why I think the Democrats flooded the country with illegals, even criminals that shouldn't be here, that are dangerous to our population. They're fighting to keep them in the country as well. So that's scary to me. But somebody's texting me. Let me see who that is. Just one of my good buddies. Let's get into the next video. I may have to, it kind of played a little bit, so I'm going to it may have to replay, but let's go ahead and see what Orange Man Bad has to say.
Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Catch the latest on this story at Fox 32 on Fox Local.
You guys get the idea. So I don't believe there's a ceasefire. I think both sides are rearming and regrouping, and they're getting ready for another war. And I think the only play right now is if the Mossad or the Iranian government launch some kind of terror attacks within the United States. So we send in ground troops into Iran. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. That's probably what's going to end up happening. I predicted this before, Reluctant Prophet, in one of my other shows, that this is all about buying time for the sleeper cells, or maybe even the Mossad with their allies, the CIA, to launch terror attacks within the U.S. So we'll send ground troops in. And I don't know if Trump is aware of this or if he's being played, but I think that that's the long-term play. What do you guys think? Let's take a look at the next video, because this is about the sleeper cell threat. And then I'm going to discuss whether or not Sleepy Joe could even be held liable for flooding our country with all of these people, like over 5 million gotaways by some estimates out of like the 20 million that he allowed to come across our borders illegally. A lot of them hostile to our country. Just imagine this. We don't know how many people that the government caught with man pads and with other weapons, because they'll say it's an active investigation and they won't tell us, right? And I think Reluctant Prophet knows about that, or BZ Watchdog. When you try to do FOIA requests, they won't give it to you. They'll say it's an active investigation, or they'll give you a big paper that's all blacked out that doesn't tell you anything. So I'm very, very scared for our families, our wives and kids. And that's why I did this show tonight, just so we could talk about it together, because I want you guys to be aware so you're safe if something does go down. Let's check this out. This will blow your mind.
Joe Biden's very bad border policies, again, front and center. The Department of Homeland Security battles the threat of sleeper cells waking up amid the conflict with Iran, specifically concerns over unvetted Iranian nationals allowed into our interior.
Fox News' Bill Malugin has more on this story from New York. Hi, Bill.
Well, Dagan and Guy, our southern border was open and unsecure during much of the Biden presidency, and that is now renewing concerns about possible Iranian sleeper cells who may have slipped into the country during those years. Take a look at this. Internal Border Patrol data obtained by Fox News reveals there were just over 1,500 Iranians caught crossing the southern border illegally from fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2024, with the overwhelming majority of those apprehensions happening in 2023 and 2024. Of that number, 729 Iranians were released into the U.S. That's nearly half of all the Iranian nationals who illegally crossed the border.
Well, I do agree with Reluctant Prophet that it could be a government attack, or it could just be the government ignoring all of these illegal aliens and people who are dangerous to our country by letting them come in. So to me, the border is really important. Both you guys, What's the Matter You and RP, because we know that just by not doing anything about it, the government is still responsible. By allowing criminals and illegal aliens to walk into our country and offering them sanctuary, exempting them from our laws, I think that our government created this problem. So I would agree in that regard. Let's keep listening.
Fox News saw Iranians and other Middle Eastern migrants crossing illegally into Jacumba, California almost every day and night in spring of 2024. Most of the Iranians told me they were fleeing the regime.
Iran.
Iran.
You're all from Iran. Why'd you come?
No freedom.
No freedom?
Yes, in Iran. Iran is a dangerous country. No freedom for speak, for writing, for singing, for thinking.
But an even bigger security concern for the U.S. is the
so just imagine, like those guys saying that, they could very well have their wife. They're guys. There's no women with them. Their children are not with them. So it's very possible that they could be held hostage by the mullahs and the ayatollahs over in Iran. And these people came across to do us harm at the behest of the Iranian government. And again, they're part of the BRICS alliance, the BRICS currency alliance, where they're trying to replace the US dollar with the BRICS currency system, part of the communist Chinese anti-American network. So it's very plausible. By the way, these are just the guys that were caught, guys. Again, there were at least 5 million people who we have no idea who are not apprehended, caught, and released. So don't think for a minute that these are the only ones that the government caught. So let's keep listening.
2 million known gotaways who slipped across the border during Biden's presidency without ever being apprehended.
We did see thousands of people come into our country over an open border under the Biden administration that came from the Middle East. We have always been aware of the fact that some of these folks that may have come into our country could have potentially been radicalized. And so that is why we continue every day to go out and identify individuals that could be a threat to our homeland.
And there's no way for us to know how many, if any, of those Iranians that crossed the border illegally were on a terror watch list because the Biden administration repeatedly denied Fox News FOIA requests for that data, saying they had privacy concerns for the people on the terror watch list and that disclosing the data would not be in the public interest. We'll send it back to you.
Bill Melugin, thank you so much.
For more on this subject, let's bring in Customs and Border Protection Senior Advisor Ron Vitiello. Ron, it's good to see you. So we just heard that report from Bill Melugin. It was one of the first thoughts that I had when this reporting first emerged, that there might be terror cells that Iran was at least threatening to activate, potentially even here in the homeland. You had this unvetted border, this insecure border for years. How do you assess this threat?
Well, it's a real threat, and people need to be vigilant. That's why the secretary showing leadership changed the National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin that we do jointly with the FBI to make sure the state and local partners that are out there, the front line of law enforcement, understands that because of what's happening over there, it could affect us here and it could affect the people. But to your obvious point, the 2 million gotaways, so maybe 20 million people came to the United States during the Biden presidency. And their own secretary.
Well, Tom Homan of the Border Patrol, formerly of the Border Patrol, says that it was more like 5 million. So even if it was 100,000, and I do agree with what's the matter you, other ones could have come in well supplied, but it's much harder to come in legally. So if you have a wide open porous border like Sleepy Joe allowed to happen, it's much easier for you to sneak weapons and things like that. Look at all the fentanyl that was snuck across. It wasn't brought in here on 747s. It was brought in here on the back of mules that were funded by the drug cartels, who are in turn funded by the communist Chinese. So just think about that, guys. By the way, the communist Chinese are the same ones, by many estimates, who fund people like Katie Hobbs, who just vetoed a bill that would prevent the communist Chinese from owning farmland next to U.S. military bases. So we have to assume that our politicians, probably on both parties, but we know that Arizona is Democrat, so it's Democrat politicians running the show there, as well as California, who are being funded by our political and geopolitical enemies like communist China.
They have a real secretary now. Their old secretary, the old secretary, told us that 85% of those people were released into America. And so what I can tell you from being an operator for that long, you don't get time. When you have 5,000 people coming across the border illegally every night, you don't have time to vet people the way you want to. You don't have time to do deep dive interviews and get the information that's in their phone or in their pockets. They were overwhelmed for almost 4 years. That nonsense at the border is over. We've seen a 99% decrease in crossings at the southwest border and a 100% increase in the capability of the front line. And they're out there stress-free in a risky environment because they can now do their job, and they know that the Oval Office and the Secretary has their back.
Ron, so we've been looking at the numbers, 1,500 arrested. How easily or how difficult is it for Customs and Border Patrol, ICE, the members of law enforcement to identify potential Iranian nationals in this country who are a danger to the U.S., potentially?
The front line does this very well. The collection for intelligence and what they know before, like if someone's coming in from another country on an airplane or at sea, even in the land border, they understand when they're coming and where they're coming from. The open border between the ports under Joe Biden, it's nearly impossible to vet that many people. And we certainly didn't vet the 10 million that got away, or the 2 million on record that got away. And so if you give the front line the tools and the time, they can typically solve this problem. But it is a matter of what we already know about the individual and then what we share with the country they're coming from. And in the case of Iran, if they were sending people over here that were going to do this sleeper cell kind of activity, or if they're going to get radicalized while they're here, or instructions from the Iranians, that would be very difficult to find.
Yeah, and of course, if people cross the border illegally and there's a microphone in their face, hey, why are you coming from Iran? It's like, oh, I'm afraid of the regime. I'm sure that's true for many of them. But if you're here to join a sleeper cell, you're not going to tell Bill Melugin or anyone else. That's part of the concern here. And of course, we're tracking it. Ron Vitiello, good to see you. Thank you.
All right. So really quickly, I'll get into the law part of my show. So here's the problem. And this is something that Reluctant Prophet talks about a lot on his show. And I talk a lot about it on my show, is the police state. The fact that judges and cops and prosecutors have so much immunity, as well as government employees in general, like mayors, for example. And so let's talk about what consequences could Joe Biden or his administration face for allowing at least 20 million that we know of illegal alien criminals to just walk across our border and get on the tax rolls while they're putting them in front of veterans and other people who actually paid taxes their whole lives. So let's talk about that. Could President Biden even be liable under U.S. law for failing to protect our borders? Well, let's talk about it. So President Biden's liability for failing to protect our borders from Iranian sleeper cells entering the country is complex, and it involves constitutional, statutory, and practical considerations. And so below, what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze the potential legal basis for liability. And I'm going to draw on U.S. law and relevant context from various sources that I've been able to find on Westlaw, LexisNexis, as well as on the internet. And I'm going to critically examine the issue. So I'm going to address the civil, criminal, and political accountability of Sleepy Joe, Dementia Joe Biden, and his criminal presidential organization, as well as the practical challenges of attributing legal liability to him or any of his other people in his administration, because it's very speculative and multifaceted when it comes to sleeper cells. So the constitutional and statutory framework is what's most important here, because the primary obligation of the president is to protect our borders. Without a border, you don't have a country. That's the bottom line. And the U.S. Constitution and federal laws outline the president's responsibilities and potential liabilities. Key provisions include the Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution. It requires the president to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, number one. And this includes enforcing immigration and national security laws, such as those governing border security. The Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 8 U.S.C. Section 1101 at SEC, provides that failure to enforce these laws could be construed as a dereliction of duty, though this is typically a political rather than a legal issue unless specific violations occur, like bribery or something like that, a high crime or a misdemeanor, whatever that is, right? National security powers. The president has broad authority over national security, including border protection, under statutes like the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. Section 1601 et sec. And for those of you who are non-lawyers, et sec, et sequitur simply means and other sections, which could include case law, for example. By the way, guys, do you like my new Shure microphone? Give me a bunch of ones if you like it, that I don't sound like I'm in an echo chamber anymore. So the Homeland Security Act 6 USC Section 101 et sec. However, this authority comes with discretion, and courts are reluctant to second guess executive decisions unless, of course, it's Donald Trump, right? And if it's a Democrat judge, it's a problem. That's another reason I don't like political judges. Activists, give me a bunch of ones if you hate activist judges, right? So the next one would be the War Powers Act, the War Powers Resolution, 50 USC Section 1541 et sec. Give me 1 second, guys. I just got to clear my throat and turn the mic off. Sorry about that. And that regulates military actions, but doesn't directly address border security or covert threats like sleeper cells, right? However, failure to address credible threats like Iranian operatives, which we just saw some people on the news that very well could be military operatives for Iran. Remember, it's only military-age males that they were catching. They weren't catching their families, guys. They're catching military-age males of countries like Iran that, as part of their culture, say death to America, walking across our border without their wives and kids. So think about that. And this definitely could raise questions about compliance with our national security obligations. So what is the potential legal liability for Dementia Sleepy Joe, the traitor president? Well, liability for a president failing to protect the border from Iranian sleeper cells could theoretically arise in several forms, but it has significant legal hurdles. Civil liability under the Tort Claims Act, under the Federal Civil Tort Claims Act, 28 USC Section 1346, says that the government can be sued for negligence caused by federal employees. But the president is generally immune from personal civil liability, and that is Nixon versus Fitzgerald, 457 U.S. 731, and that's a 731, 1982. If a president's policies, lax border enforcement, led to harm from a terrorist attack by Iranian sleeper cells, the victims could sue the government, but the president personally would be shielded because of his discretionary functions. And that's 28 USC Section 2680 sub A. And that protects policy decisions, making lawsuits against the government unlikely to succeed unless gross negligence can be proven. All right. Very difficult. Now, private lawsuits, private citizens or groups harmed by a hypothetical attack, and it's probably going to happen, might argue that the president failed to protect them, but courts typically dismiss such claims as non-justiciable political questions, and that's Baker versus Carr, 369 U.S. 186, 1962. The search results and the Westlaw and LexisNexis research that I was able to find about Iranian nationals entering during the Biden administration are real, but no evidence links specific border policies to active sleeper cells because they won't give it to us. If you do a FOIA request about these guys, like you just saw, you won't be able to get it. Criminal liability, misprision of a felony under 18 USC Section 4, which has to do with concealing knowledge of a felony like terrorist activity, could theoretically apply, but proving a president, like a guy suffering from dementia, knowingly ignored credible threats is probably going to be impossible, guys. And so the bottom line is, even with FBI surveillance and Iran's threats, we don't have the evidence because they won't give it to us. So we don't know if the president deliberately concealed evidence or not. So what about treason or espionage, like Hunter Biden going to communist China, which funds the Iranian government, right? Well, let's talk about that. 18 USC Section 2381, it's about aiding and abetting enemies during wartime and espionage. 18 USC Section 793 is what we're going to talk about. It involves disclosing classified information. So it very well could be that Dementia Joe's operatives that he left in power in our administrative offices warned Iran in advance about these attacks and aided and abetted Iranian agents to come across our border. Remember that Bathhouse Berry gave over $400 billion to the Iranian government when they were on the verge of collapsing. They would have collapsed without that money. And they used that money to instigate terrorist attacks into Israel. So that could be construed as treason if we could get the information that's all classified, right? So failing to secure the border, even if negligent, doesn't meet these thresholds unless the president actively colluded with Iran, which is speculative and right now unsupported by any evidence that we can obtain. My offices couldn't obtain it either. We've done FOIA requests. We can't get anything. There's an active investigation. How are you going to get it? So neglect of duty, there's no specific federal crime for failing to protect the border. So criminal liability would require a clear statutory violation. And impeachment would be your only solution. Well, Sleepy Joe's already out of office. So political accountability under Article 2, Section 4 really wouldn't apply. In that, which is what I discussed earlier, high crimes and misdemeanors. A failure to address a known threat from Iranian sleeper cells could be framed as a dereliction of duty, but Democrats would never vote to impeach Sleepy Joe because he's part of their party, right? So the issue is, even if it led to a terrorist attack, and the search results that I found showing at least 1,500 Iranian nationals that were actually caught entering under Biden in the open border and all that other stuff, it would have to be an impeachment process that would get the president out of office. And he's already out of office. So that's a problem. Hey, life under the microscope. Good seeing you, brother. And it would require a 2/3 Senate vote. So he's already out of office. So it's sort of a moot point, as we would say. Now, the war powers violation, the Democrats are arguing, because they're allies of Iran, that strikes on Iran violated the war powers resolution, but that also doesn't directly relate to border security. And again, we know that Trump put troops on the border to protect it. So he's doing his best to at least stop the illegal aliens from coming into the country. Now, Iranian sleeper cells, we do know that Iran just recently threatened to activate their sleeper cells. So we know that Iran at least admits that they have sleeper cells in the country. We do know that. So that obviously prompted heightened DHS and FBI surveillance, but all that's going to do is they're going to pass more laws that restrict our freedom. And so that's where I agree with What's the Matter You, is that all of these things are being used as pretexts, pretexts, to take away your and my freedom, which I absolutely disagree with. So let me see what else I got here. We know that the DHS just recently issued a memo on heightened security threat environments after we bombed Iran. So we know that's going on. Now, the biggest thing is the legal challenges. The approving a president's border policies directly enabled sleeper cells to enter is speculative. The gotaways cited by Mr. Homan, lack evidence of terrorist affiliations that we've been able to get because it's all being concealed by our government. General border security failures don't necessarily translate to specific liability for these Iranian operatives. Presidents have wide latitude in setting immigration and border policies. Courts rarely intervene, like I said, and the government won't give us any evidence. So how do we know? Now, the Supreme Court's Nixon-Fitzgerald case grants presidents absolute immunity for their official acts, which is why these cases against Trump are going to be reversed on appeal, that all the Democrat judges, Democrat prosecutors appointed by George Soros money got to prevent him from being able to run for president. So that's going to be reversed as well. Now, the sleeper cell concern is amplified by people like me because I'm concerned about it. But again, we don't have the evidence. We don't have the direct evidence. We have circumstantial evidence. Congress could investigate the failures, but this is political, not legal. And again, gross negligence and misconduct would have to be proven. And focusing on Biden-era policies isn't going to do you much good with Dementia Joe not even knowing where he is, getting lost in his own closet half the time, right? So it's highly improbable that anybody could sue Dementia Joe for any of this stuff. So I don't have a whole lot of time to get into the other stuff that I found about the president's job to secure the border, but I can just say that in our early history, from 1846 to 1848, we deployed forces to the Texas-Mexico border, and Trump did that, and that's why the illegal alien invasion that was funded by the Democrat Party and non-governmental organizations has ceased. But the damage has already been done. They've already entered our country, and we have no idea where they are or who they are or what they've done. So it's a real problem. Now, even in the pre-Civil War, border patrols were instituted in the 1850s, and U.S. troops occasionally patrolled the southwest border to protect against bandits. So there's a strong history of protecting our borders. In the early 20th century, we had immigration and banditry happening all the time, and we had mounted U.S. immigration agents, watchmen who patrolled the border in 1904 to prevent illegal crossings, primarily targeting Chinese immigrants under the Chinese Exclusion Act, and military troops would intervene against that. And then ultimately in 1924, we established a border patrol, but Biden actually used the border patrol to aid and abet the illegal aliens crossing. He caught them, gave them free cell phones, and told them to go to sanctuary cities and bust them there, because he knew that he could use illegal aliens in sanctuary cities to pick up more Democrat House seats using the United States Census, which is the real reason why the Democrats at least flooded the country with these illegals, so they could get more House seats. That was it. That was the reason, guys. In any event, we've got the war on drugs in the late 20th century, Reagan's war on drugs. We've got post 9/11. We beefed up border security. And then, of course, Biden opened up the border, allowing these illegals to flood into our country, many of them hostile and who hate America. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So let's get into the next couple of videos, and then we'll call it a night. All right, guys? I'm getting kind of tired.
Wesley Clark is a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Andrew Boreen is former senior officer with the DNI and an executive director at Flashpoint. So, Courtney, tell us about your reporting on these threats to the U.S. homeland.
Yeah, so we've learned, according to our colleagues Carol Lee and Monica Alba and I, our sources, telling us that recently Iran sent a message directly to President Donald Trump, warning him that if he were to engage in U.S. military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, that Iran has a number of sleeper cells here in the United States, and they could unleash some sort of a terror attack here domestically. Now, this message came through an intermediary during the G7 meeting in Canada. Chris, you'll recall that President Trump left that meeting early, saying that he needed to come back to D.C. to deal with the ongoing tensions between Israel and Iran. Now, this is not the only threat of the notion that there could be some sort of an attack here in the United States. As you mentioned, there is a lot of concern by defense officials and administration officials about the possibility that Iran could retaliate against U.S. installations in the region. There's not just military bases, but there's also U.S. Navy ships in the region. And remember, this is not just concern about sort of a big Iran attack, meaning the actual regime striking with missiles or drones. There's always the possibility that some of those Iranian proxy networks, which still exist.
Well, somebody made an argument that the Republicans would lose seats if the illegals left the country. Well, that's bullshit, because the illegal aliens go to sanctuary cities, which are Democrat. And again, California would lose, by most estimates, at least 5 House seats. They would lose their control of California. California would once again be a red state without illegal aliens. So you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude.
Many have been damaged, but there are some that still exist and have the ability to attack U.S. bases and installations. There's the concern that they also could be unleashed here, Chris. The biggest one of those concerns is that they could try to overwhelm defenses at some of these smaller bases in the area. Chris?
So, Andrew, what is your assessment of the capability of Iranian sleeper cells? Can you tell us a little bit more about who they are and what they could actually do?
Yeah. First off, when we think about Iranian-aligned militia groups, they're largely, for the last 40 years, been supported through the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and Al-Quds Force. Now, in terms of capabilities, 2 of the very senior-most Iranian leaders that had been pushing, for instance, tactics, techniques, and materials into some of the networks that were killing U.S. troops in Iraq. With IEDs and some of the more sophisticated penetration charges have been taken off the battle space in the last 72 hours. So in some ways, I think that there is that in addition to the IDF operation that targeted Hezbollah leadership with the pagers, with a number of strikes against the Houthis in Yemen by the U.S. I think they are degraded. There's no question. And we're seeing it through Hezbollah even announcing that it would not be actively participating against Israel after Israel started its air campaign last week.
So when these cities ramp up their...
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so as individual cities here at home ramp up their protection, do you see it as more out of an abundance of caution?
Look, even before the State Department had issued a heightened terror awareness alert, or DHS had announced this, or for instance, Los Angeles Police Department had announced that they were getting on a stronger footing for anti-terrorism. I think that is, one, wise, and two, I think my biggest fear is that one of these singletons or lone wolves or even a small cell that has been had a persistent presence here in the United States or in any other area outside of the Middle East would self-activate based on kind of a loss of traditional command and control as the Iranian regime and IRGC and Quds Force leadership is taken off the battlefield. And that I think is a real concern.
So, General, what do you make of that? I want to look at the big picture and in country as well as out of country. But what about that idea of, for lack of a better term, what we used to call a lone wolf or self-activating? What do you see as the threat level there? And what's your level of concern for American forces throughout the region?
Well, here at home, I think there are sleeper cells. I think they could self-activate. I think they could do individual acts of murder against officials if they could identify those officials and get to them. They might go after a sensitive infrastructure like the electricity grid. And you don't have to do it with cyber. You could do it with, let's say, explosives. So that would be one effort that they could make.
Well, at least you guys can see that I don't have a bunch of dogmatic moderators. Come on, guys. You guys are mods. Try to be nice to each other, at least while we're live. As you guys can see, I have people who are to the left paradigm, to the right paradigm. I have people on here who help me moderate the channel precisely because they don't think exactly like me. I'm not looking for people to agree with me. What I'm trying to do is get people to think critically, to think outside the box. Because it sounds like at least half the people in this audience are Marxist Democrats, and they basically are just regurgitating bullshit that they've heard from the Marxist Democrat-run news media. And so it's striking to me that you guys are being told what to think by billionaires who control the news media instead of doing your own research. It's really striking to me. I do encourage all of you people to learn the law and potentially maybe become a lawyer without law school, which is the way I was able to do it. To where you're not being influenced by radical Marxist professors and then end up getting jobs as professional baristas at Starbucks. Let's keep listening.
Is it going to be significant? Doubtless. It will be enraging the American people if it happens. It's the best way Iran could ensure a really dramatic strike by the United States that would enable the United States to really go after the regime rather than the nuclear. So I put that as low probability. I say the greatest probability is some of the militia, not Hezbollah, with a few rockets and then ground attacks going after isolated American outposts, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, that area as a indicator of strength.
By the way, guys, make sure to double tap that screen and like and subscribe as well. And I encourage you guys, although I appreciate super chats and all that trash, the biggest thing for me is for you guys to get subscriptions, because I do back channel shows where I teach people how to practice law, how to study law, how to become lawyers with no law degree or undergrad. And we can talk about things that we don't necessarily want to talk about publicly, right? Especially you guys who have jobs and you don't want to get fired. So I'm always available for anybody who wants to get a subscription to do back channel talks. All right, let's keep going.
But not a decisive commitment by the regime.
NBC's Keir Simmons is in Erbil, Iraq, where we do have troops stationed, and he joins us now live. How have things changed there over the past 48 hours? Tell us what you are seeing where you are.
Well, it's calm, Chris, and that doesn't necessarily tell you anything. We can see the U.S. base here in Erbil, those bases that were just being mentioned by your contributor. We can see one at that base from here. We're about 2 hours from the Iranian border. It's certainly one of, if not the closest U.S. base to Iran. So if there was going to be a targeting of U.S. Forces, it might happen here. Now, I will tell you, just news before I came to you, we're hearing that Qatar has closed its airspace. That is suggesting that in Doha, they are concerned that there might be some kind of a retaliation by the Iranians coming. They have closed their airspace, and it looks like from, these days, of course, we're able to monitor planes in the sky, right? It looks like from those online sites that a number of planes have had to redirect. So they didn't take that decision lightly in that case. The other Gulf states, though, not closing airspace at this stage. So what are the Qataris doing there that the others aren't doing? That's an interesting question. I should just mention, too, we do have now a new statement from President Trump on Truth Social.
Hey, Doc.
Anna, Chris, and I'll just, it's long. You've probably read it too, right? And he says, did I hear former President Medvedev from Russia casually throwing around the N-word, brackets nuclear, and saying he and other countries would supply nuclear warheads to Iran, question mark? Did he really say that, or is it just a figment of my imagination? If he did say that, and if confirmed, please let me know immediately. And he goes on. So that's an indication to me of how febrile the atmosphere is becoming. Dmitry Medvedev is not really a spokesperson for the Russian government. He was a prime minister, he was a president, but he was pushed out of office again by President Putin, and he tends to post inflammatory comments that should be read with a dose of salt. Doesn't look like President Trump has done that. It's a difficult. So you asked me about. You began by asking me about the atmosphere here in Kurdistan. It's pretty calm here, but I think not really.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Keir, which generally leads to the question about what, if any, role you see for Russian President Vladimir Putin. I mean, the Kremlin spokesman today said that Russia is ready to help Iran. How does this fit into the overall picture in your mind?
So I think Putin would like to be invoked as a mediator. That's his ideal role. President Trump has not thus far invited him in. I think it's a little early for Russia to begin deploying, let's say, military assets to assist Iran. I think Putin remains focused on Ukraine. What he wants is to have Europe and the United States totally distracted, focus on Iran, let him go after Ukraine. He does have some kind of a relationship with President Trump. We don't know what it is, but it seems that the NATO summit's coming up. We'll see what President Trump says at the summit about Ukraine. But this is clearly Putin trying to have it both ways. He wants to focus on Ukraine. He doesn't want to throw Iran totally under the bus, but he doesn't want a confrontation with President Trump over Iran.
So let's go back to Iran, Andrew. They've been talking big, telling Trump, you started the war, but we will end it. How are Iranian officials, do you imagine, calculating their next move?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I think right now, Iranian military leadership and political leadership is largely in a defensive crouch. All
right, so we're just going to wrap it up, guys. I've got to go do some stuff with the kids tonight, but I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. And I would hope that you guys would try to keep it civil in the chat. Come on, Mias, try to at least don't cast aspersions on people. We know you're a good person at heart. Yesterday or the day before, I did show a video about General Wesley Clark's speech where he talked about all this and foresaw that all these attacks were going to happen. My personal belief is that these wars are about the BRICS currency countries fighting against America's dollar. The BRICS currency countries are trying to replace the US dollar with a gold-backed currency, which is precisely what our founding fathers wanted for our country. And you really can't fault people for wanting to have a currency that's based upon something of intrinsic value as opposed to fiat currency. My personal belief is the Jekyll Island debacle was a sellout by our traitorous politicians in turning over our economy to the banksters, bandits. And those are the people who are the real problem. And I don't know how we're going to change that other than forming parallel systems. And so what I encourage you to do is to become friends with people on my channel and do business amongst each other. Don't shop at these Targets and these other nightmare, grandiose oligarch corporations where they try to tell boys that they're girls and girls that they're boys and stuff like that. People that want to put tampon machines in their men's room and this DEI bullshit, this didn't earn it, right? DEI didn't earn it. And return America to a position of merit-based society where we elect people and we befriend people based on their merit, not by the way they look. Gender identity, racial identity, that's just all an effort by our government to try and separate us and turn us against one another. And we don't need that. So on my channel, what I would recommend that you guys do is become friends with each other and like and subscribe to each other's channels. Read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence. Become anti-federalists like me. Read Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And maybe for you guys who are, in the chat not getting along, how to win friends and influence people and learn a little bit about civility, because we're not going to be able to change anything if we engage in ad hominem attacks against one another. That's my job, to make fun of Sleepy Joe and the Marxist Democrats, right? So at the end of the day, we need to form parallel systems, homeschool our kids, homestead, and start doing business with each other the same way that Martin Luther King Jr. did when the racist shopkeepers were barring and banning Black people from shopping at those stores. They created their own microeconomy. And I suggest that we start doing the same thing. In tonight's chat, we had over 100,000 viewers. At certain parts of the show, we had over 1,000 people watching simultaneously. And that's what I'm trying to do is convince people to get off of the government crack of CNN and Fox News and start doing your own research and forming parallel systems. So really quickly, I just want to see if there's any questions that I can respond to. Oh my gosh, thank you, Gloria Ad. So Gloria Ad just gifted some memberships. Thank you, Gloria. I do appreciate that. What's the matter? You received one. What's the matter? You welcome back aboard as a Lance Corporal. What's the matter? You's one of my homies. Yeah, and be prepared, guys, for terrorist attacks. You know it's probably going to happen. I mean, Iran hates us. And with Sleepy Joe's wide open borders, we know that they're already in the country. So another thing that you could do is go to the Army Navy surplus, start buying non-perishable goods, get yourself a gas generator, make sure that you're able to have some kind of electricity when the power grid goes down. If it does, just be prepared. I'm not fear-mongering, but with a wide open border, at least 5 million gotaways by some estimates, military-age males coming in from countries that hate us, from these radical religious nut job countries, not bringing their wives and kids, coming in as military-age males. I think that we've got a lot more to worry about than you think. And I don't think this ceasefire is going to hold. I don't think that we got any of their nuclear capabilities. And I think that ultimately we're going to have to send in boots on the ground. And that's only going to make America less safe and ultimately be an excuse for the globalists and the people in our government to take away more of our freedoms. So stack up on ammo, stack up on food, and probably want to invest in UVIX and FAZ, F-A-Z on the stock index while it's cheap, if you can. Just an idea. I'm not giving financial advice, but that's what I did. And typically when there's situations like this where things are volatile, that might give you some extra Federal Reserve notes to be able to provide for your families. Reluctant Prophet, thank you for joining me. You have a great night too. And I definitely want to get with you and talk about exposing some of the corruption going on in Arizona and see if we can do some shows together and get caught up on what's going on with Lane Myers. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate everyone showing up. God bless everybody, irrespective of what your religious beliefs are. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save. Make sure to share this with your friends, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi,